A wall-to-wall coverage of the final journey of Mzee Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, the second president of the Republic of Kenya, ruled for almost a quarter of a century, for 24 years, and stayed out 18 years since handing over power in 2002 until his death just about 4 days ago in this year 2020. A man who's died at the age of 96, having served this country as a public servant for a very long time. And what you're seeing on your screens now is just the beginning of the final journey that will culminate at his Kabarak home on Wednesday next week. Remember, Tuesday has been equipped to be a public holiday, as there will be an interdenominational prayer service at the Nyayo National Stadium as Kenyans continue to pour in their condolences and their respects for this great man who served this country at the helm as president for 24 good years. These are live pictures we're bringing you from Parliament. Remember, President Uhuru Kenyatta was the first to open up the gates of the viewing of the body as the head of state, and this happened just a few minutes after he had addressed members of the press. About an hour since he made his first press briefing since the demise of the former president. Remember, the President Uhuru Kenyatta has not been in the country. Even when he gave the proclamation of the death of the former president, he was not in the country. Hence why we were just getting his first state address on the death of the second president of the Republic of Kenya this morning at around 9:35 a.m. About 45 minutes later, he was at Parliament, flanked by his Deputy President, Dr. William Ruto, Cabinet Secretaries, Principal Secretaries. Even when he was making this particular address at the State House here in Nairobi, he was flanked and seen largely making this address as the head of the executive, flanked by his team before they made their way to Parliament, being the first group to view the bodies. And then, of course, we will be seeing members of Parliament, legislators from across the country who will then proceed to view this. We are seeing foreign diplomats, we are seeing members of the judiciary, various leaders in the country viewing this full body of the late President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, who died at 96 years of age at the Nairobi hospital here in Nairobi. And as I mentioned, a journey that will culminate to the final interment at his Kabarak home, where he'll be buried next to his wife, Lena Moi. So for the next 5 hours, we'll be taking at the live proceedings on what really is happening on the ground in Parliament. Our team is set, bringing us every possible angle of this particular story, prominently coming out from Parliament. Our senior reporters, Zubeida Kome, Duncan Haimba, reporter Timothy Otieno, Stanley Mbichu, Patrick Amimo, our senior parliamentary reporter, all there to bring us the latest commentary that we're getting, the latest information we're getting from Parliament, interviews from people who worked with Moi, from people who knew Moi, from people who worked under Moi. Remember, for 24 years, a big number of people who are currently in both the government or in the political sphere are people who worked under Moi, most of them actually being termed as Moi's political orphans. So we'll be seeing interviews intermittently here from our reporters who are on the ground. We'll be speaking to a number of analysts even as we go through or we go over the 96 years of life, the public servant, a man who started from humble beginnings in Tambach as a teacher, born in Sacho in 1924, and now heading over to become a teacher in Tambach, then to a member of parliament, then to a vice president, then to a president for 24 years, a man who spent a lot of time as working in the public service. And earlier on today, when President Uhuru Kenyatta gave his press briefing, he termed the late president as a man who ruled with a firm and steady hand, reassuring this small nation and her allies at a time when the world was in the grip of the Cold War. The president also eulogized Mzee Moi as a man who built Kenya by large by the works of his hands, saying that he was a visionary leader who in 2002 left office with a gracious word of advice for those who took up his job, a job he kept for more than 20 years. Like I mentioned earlier, quarter of a century for 24 years. So those are live pictures we're bringing you of dignitaries who are just walking in, most of them now members of parliament, walking in to view the body of the late President Mzee Moi. Remember, that body will be lying there there in Parliament, lying in state for 3 days, starting today to set up to Monday. And then after that, we'll see a special sitting in Parliament for the legislators on Monday. On Tuesday, there will be the interdenominational prayer in Nyayo Stadium, where Kenyans will have a public holiday to give them a chance to recollect. What sort of a man was this? What sort of a president was this? What do Kenyans remember about this man? And of course, celebrate a life that spanned in 96 years. So then after that, the final interment will be at his Kabrak home on Wednesday, where once again, we expect a lot of dignitaries to fly down there and just pay their last respects to the man who you cannot divorce away from the Kenyan history since we gained independence in 1963. Remember, earlier on, we saw the solemn procession of the president's body from the Lee Funeral Home to Parliament, where it will be lying in state for 3 days. We saw military officers pushing the coffin of the former Kenyan president from the Lee Funeral to Parliament. The casket carrying his body was draped with a Kenyan flag, and we understand that it left the Lee Funeral parlor at about 7:15 a.m. This particular casket was draped by the Kenya Defense Forces, and at this point I should mention that this entire funeral procession is a whole military and civilian function, but of course the military being a lot more prominent, we are informed of things like we will be seeing a 19-gun salute for the president as he will be buried on Wednesday. The military has taken over this particular function since, of course, the family made that announcement on Wednesday, just a day after the passing of the former president after an illness, and he died at the Nairobi hospital here in Nairobi. This particular casket that was wheeling the president to Parliament was wheeled by a carriage that we understand also carried the former president, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, who was the first president of the Republic of Kenya. And of course, we are also seeing protocol officers present to guide the public. This particular viewing will be open to the public after all the dignitaries are done. Remember, the president opened up this space for viewing of the body when he did the viewing at about 10:20 a.m., accompanied by his deputy, Dr. William Ruto, cabinet secretaries, principal secretaries. Thereafter, we saw various political leaders. We've seen members of parliament. We've seen members of the judiciary. And then now it will be open to the public to just pass around and view the body, pay their last respects to the former president who ruled this country for 24 years. Remember, the public holding place will be at the Comesa grounds in KICC. And I've just had my colleague Grace Kuria say that Kenyans who are planning to head to Parliament for the viewing are advised to not carry a lot of luggage, as security there is tight and they're trying to make this process as smooth as possible. So what you're seeing are live pictures, both from outside, where a lot of Kenyans are lining up to view the body of a man who was at the helm of the presidency, or the helm of the executive and the country at large for 24 years, getting into power just after the death of former president and the first president of the country, Jomo Kenyatta. And of course, at that time, Daniel Arap Moi was the vice president, deputizing President Jomo Kenyatta. And then we're also bringing you live pictures there from Parliament, where we are seeing a lot of members of Parliament and leaders also just coming in to pay their last respects. Security pretty tight from what we've heard from our teams on the ground, monitoring the security and how the entire process is being conducted. There seems to be a semblance of organization, something that was planned quite quickly, bearing in mind that the Mzee died on Tuesday, and this is just, about 4 days later, and the Parliament is now open to the public to view the body of the former president. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be speaking to a number of analysts to just once again go through the life of the man. What do they remember about him? What do you as a Kenyan remember about this man? What struck you the most about the former president? We've had stories featuring prominently, stories of the Maziwa Nyayo, story of Momonyoko wa Udongo, how he was an environmentalist at heart, coining words like kata moja panda mbili, as far as, cutting down of trees, deforestation and that. So what struck you the most about this man? We'll be very keen to hear that. Of course, we'll be as well be going through some of your comments on our social media pages to just take a look at what are you saying about this man, even as we continue bringing you the live coverage of the viewing of the body of the former president, Mzee Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, beg your pardon there. Remember, President Uhuru Kenyatta once again gave his address to the nation at about 9:35 a.m. this morning. The first address since the passing on of the former president. And the president posed a question asking, how does one mourn a man like this? How does one mourn an icon like this? How does one mourn this former president? And it will be interesting to hear what we would have to say. Of course, the president fondly eulogizing him, saying that this is the final journey of a great son of Kenya, a cherished brother, a father, a mentor, father of the nation, a champion of Pan-Africanism, and the second president of the country. President Uhuru Kenyatta then going ahead to say that this is a man who built Kenya in large by the works of his hand, a hand that was firm and steady and reassured this particular nation, not just this particular nation, but the allies as well, saying that this son has set on a truly extraordinary man. You could bear in mind how the president spoke very fondly of former President Daniel Moi, because it is largely seen that this was his political father, this was his political teacher. So when we talk about political offense of the president, of the former president, Uhuru Kenyatta tops the list, followed by his deputy president, Dr. William Ruto, and a lot of people that we are seeing in our political space currently. So they have had a lot to say about the former president. And of course, we'll be bringing you all those details, even as we continue with this live coverage of the death, the final process or the final procession of the former president. What you're seeing are live pictures there. I can see a number of senators led by Senate Speaker Ken Lusaka, Majority Leader of the Senate Kipchumba Murkomen. We can as well see Deputy President William Ruto. Of course, they're leading that pack of men. We're seeing Justin Muturi, the Speaker of the National Assembly, but to name a few of the people we're able to see who are present in Parliament. Remember, all the legislators are there today as the president officially opens up the viewing of the body that will be lying in state for the next 3 days till Monday here in the Kenyan Parliament. And of course, a number of roads have been closed, and we'll be talking about that a bit shortly to just advise those who are home and would need to go through their day-to-day businesses on what really to expect as far as processes and disruptions